All right, welcome back, guys. Today we have RJ Isaac with us. Can you introduce yourself further than your name?
Yeah. So like I said, I'm RJ. I am a property manager by profession. I work with property management companies across the United States. And uh, yeah, I basically have discovered over just recognizing the tendencies and the characteristics that I have ADHD. I have not been diagnosed with it, but after consuming as much content I have on the topic, I am absolutely convinced that that is the case.
In our very short conversation before the episode, I also confirm that
Okay.
definitely RJ has the tendencies of ADHD for sure. Um, but what we were talking about some challenges that you were having with the ADHD symptoms, and one of them that I'm noticing right out of the gate is, and just so people know, this is the new form of episodes that I'm doing where we're coaching. We're actually coaching on these episodes. So, RJ is one, like probably the third one that we've done so far. But what I'm noticing is rejection, sensitivity, dysphoria. And can you tell us like how that's shown up for you?
Yeah, so this is something I really started noticing probably when I was in college. So I've never really been able to connect with people. I've always felt like I'm an outsider. Uh, Now, a big part of this, I will add, is I was homeschooled from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade. And
Mm.
so I wasn't surrounded with friends and people and finding my place like I was, or like a lot of people would in school. So when I actually went to college, I actually get to the cafeteria and I just feel like even overwhelmed. Like, how do I even sit at a table? Like, do I just go sit with other people? Do I sit on my own and have other people? Like, I don't know what to do here.
Right.
So, just to give a bit of context there. But even when I would be, with a particular group of people, I just never felt like I was accepted. And I just felt like I was a constant disappointment to everybody, even that people that I could come up with no logical reason or rational explanation why would be a disappointment to them. And that everybody just disliked me or even hated me. Again, people that I could rationally look and say there's no reason for this to be the case,
Yeah.
but that's just the impression I get. I will add that, and again, it's another case where I have some was it congenital vision problems and things, and I have also determined, again, I don't have diagnosis because there's no benefit to having a diagnosis of this, but I have some level of face blindness. So one of the big characteristics of this is that I would recognize people in school based on the backpack they wore, because if someone would change their hairstyle, I just wouldn't be able to recognize them anymore, or if they
Okay,
shave their beard.
we have to slow down. Face
Yeah,
blindness. I have
yeah,
heard of this before, but I don't really know anything about it. Could you tell me more?
yeah. So it's, what is it, prosopagnosia? It's a, you have more technical term for it. And again, like I said, I don't like people giving fake diagnosis. So I want to be very clear. This is not something I've been diagnosed, but since there's no treatment for it, it's just more of you learn how to cope with it.
Right.
I haven't really seen any benefit of going and seeking a diagnosis for it. And one of the things that people do is you don't recognize faces. And actually, a really good way I can explain this is, I'm married. I've been married for 10 years.
Mhm.
And if I was to try and picture my wife's face in my mind, I cannot conjure a picture of what my wife looks like in my mind.
Oh,
I
that is
can
fascinating.
I can conjure pictures of, anything else. I can conjure a picture of like a like and I'll give something also, one kind of distinction here. I can think of a picture of her, and if I can think of a specific picture of her, then I can remember that picture. But I can't just create a mental image of her from scratch. So like I can make a mental image of what the Mona Lisa looks like, but if someone was to go and like make the Mona Lisa the same person, the Mona Lisa, in a different context, I wouldn't recognize that they're the same person. Um,
So interesting. So
yeah.
that leads to my question actually with the RSD. Like, was it a comment that was made? Was it something somebody said, or was it the way they looked at you, or that kind of thing, or was it just a general feeling?
So it was a general feeling, and this is where I basically came to just believe that this was more of a case that I don't recognize people's faces and I can't recognize. Maybe there's some facial expressions I don't understand, and I don't know. Maybe that is still the case. It's hard for me to really know. But when I started hearing, and this rejection sensitivity was one of the big diagnoses where when I heard about that, it's like that seems to actually fit way more
Yeah.
because when I hear people talk, other people who struggle with face blindness, I don't hear them talk about this that, oh, I can't recognize people's facial expressions. And I just feel like people were mad at me all the time. So that didn't really seem to fit as well just on my own researching.
Yeah. So interesting. So if we were to solve a big challenge for you today, what would that be?
So right now, what the I would say I have two big challenges right now. One is I have to go and have phone calls with my clients, and I have an incredible amount of anxiety. And this is
Mhm.
going back to the idea of rejection sensitivity, where the going and having these weekly phone calls with the clients I have, I know there's no reason for them to be upset at me. I know that they're happy with the work I do, that every single conversation I have is positive. And even when I've had, been actually attacked, so to speak, by a client and kind of ambushed, I've been able to handle it really well. And I have those skill sets to even handle those situations.
Yeah.
But the idea that of just, I get so much anxiety from even having these Zoom calls each week, because, and I don't even, I can't really explain why. It just seems like, um, again, this feeling like even in spite of all these things that I can explain, I can rationalize, that they're probably going to still be mad at me and probably disappointed in something I'm doing, and probably unhappy with the work I'm doing, even though there's absolutely no evidence of any of that.
Yeah.
So that's one big thing. The second big thing is that I have these. It's, I guess, getting started on tasks, like I'll have the tasks that I know I need to do. So I can give a really good example of this. This is like I'll get an email and or a letter, and I know that I just need to open the letter and read what's in the letter, and I get this weird anxiety about just looking at the email or looking at the letter, not because there's, again, anything rational. But just it seems like like the effort to sometimes, not all emails, but sometimes I just like the effort to open up an email or to do a very simple task is so enormous that like I have to like psych myself up to do something like this. And I know for people who don't have ADHD, this is the most ridiculous thing, because why would it be such a big deal?
Yeah. Is it the
But
task that it will create, or is it the feeling around it?
That's a good question. Well, it's got to be the feeling around it, because I mean, it's not even necessarily that there's any task involved with it. There could be. It's just it's maybe it's the fact that it's unknown what it's going to be. It could be a case of that again. It's I get this email and I look at the email and I'm half expecting that it's going to say, we're just so disappointed with everything that you've ever done. Again, not
Are
that
you
there's a
noticing
rational
that
reason
that's a
for it.
theme? Yes.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. I recognize it's a thing. I am well aware of it.
And where do you think that theme comes from of like, I'm a disappointment?
I, um, okay. If I'm gonna be very direct, probably. I mean, there's perhaps some aspects of, just like relationships I had with my parents where
Mhm.
that was a very constant theme. Um, but beyond that, yeah, I really couldn't say.
Yeah. I mean, that's huge. Like
Yeah.
it gets very ingrained, but what we can do now is kind of rewrite the story of, you get to be your own parent now. Even if your parents are, still around, it's okay. You are a parent yourself. How does that, I'm curious how that plays out in you being a father.
In what aspect?
Like, do you go out of your way to make sure they don't feel like they're a disappointment?
So I have three boys. My
Mhm.
oldest two are autistic, nonverbal. So the relationship I have with them is just very very abnormal. It's not something it's just it's not what a typical parent-child relationship
I have an
is.
autistic
And
brother-in-law, so I definitely get that. Yeah.
yeah, and so with my youngest, it's something where I will I talk to him a lot. One of the things that will happen is when there's so
You're
I'll
doing
try and give an
fine.
example here. My when one of my autistic sons, they will have these, like particularly my oldest Andrew,
Mhm.
he will have these spells where he will just be screaming for hours, and it creates a lot of stress and a lot of tension, a lot of I mean, there's just pick any negative descriptor you want to use for the
Yeah.
emotions,
I
and
mean,
that is present there.
yeah.
And what I I started noticing was my youngest Evan. He would start seeing that that Andrew is causing all these tensions and all this stress and all this anxiety within the family and within the with all these relationships. And so he started seeming as if he was trying to step in and be the person that is responsible for mine and my wife's happiness, and
Mhm.
trying to be, maybe clown around or just, do things to try and make sure we stay happy. And
Yeah.
I would tell him, like, look, you are not responsible for our happiness. We love you. We want the best for you. And, look, we want to try and make sure you're happy, but you don't feel like you need to have this responsibility on you.
Yeah.
And so having very direct conversations about, like another thing I did, and actually I will give this as a massive piece of advice for parents, is I started doing this thing when my kids were very young, where anytime they were crying, I would ask in a very just genuine tone. So it wouldn't be like, I'd ask them, um, why are you sad? And specifically that phrase. And I
Mhm.
wouldn't say like, why are you sad? But like,
Yeah.
very question, why are you sad?
Just
And I
curiosity.
started to do, yeah, with genuine curiosity. And I didn't do this with other kids that I was just not even my own kids. The other kids that I would see that would be crying, like if I'm, picking my kids up from daycare and there's a child there that's crying, and I would just look at him and say, why are you sad? And when I asked that question, they would stop crying. And I really wanted my son, specifically with this, to start being able to describe what his emotions are and be able to answer what his emotions are.
That's
And so,
huge.
and even things like, and tell him that it's okay to be sad. I'm not mad to be sad. I just want to know what it is,
Yeah.
and that it's okay for him to be angry. And so like he'll get mad sometimes, and I'll say, why are you mad? It's like, oh, because Andrew did this thing, and I'm happy, and it made me sad. And it's like, okay, it's okay to be sad. How long do you want to be sad for? It's like, I want to be sad for 3 minutes. Like, okay, I want to start a timer for 3 minutes, and I'll
Adorable.
check in with you in 3 minutes. And timer goes off in 3 minutes. I say, all right, it's 3 minutes. How do you feel? I say, okay, I'm all better now. And he goes on playing. I mean, and so I've been really, really very focused on his emotional well-being
Mhm.
because of all these additional things with his brothers and the experiences I've had as well.
Yeah. So I'll kind of replay that on you. Like, why are you anxious about these phone calls?
Uh, Again, the only thing I can say is because I feel as if that there's that I guess in a very broad sense, I would say that I feel as if I'm never meeting up to what I should be able to do, that I'm not as attentive as I should be, and that they're just that I'm going to be disappointing my clients and getting them upset, and that you know I'm going to have some difficult conversation that I'm just not prepared for.
Do you
Um,
have it clear in your mind what exactly you should be delivering to them and how attentive you should be? And I'm putting should in quotes.
Probably, I mean, so uh, that's it's an interesting question. So I like with the work I do, it's very cyclical on a monthly basis. I have to go and deliver reports at specific times, and meet these deadlines. And generally, as long as those deadlines are being met, and and I address the issues they're running to quickly enough, I think maybe part of it could be that I'm afraid that there's something I forgot about, something that I was supposed to do that I missed that might be happening.
Mhm.
Um, but I can't say there's anything specific beyond that.
Yeah. And what happens if you miss something?
Usually they just let me know, hey, by the way, did you get this done? And I'm like, nope, I'll go take care of it right now, and it's a non-issue.
Sounds like it's not a big deal.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. And the reason I ask about like, are you specific on what you should deliver is because sometimes we can not decide what is enough in a certain container. And in this case, it might be your clients. And if we don't know what's enough, we can just kind of go on and on and on forever on what we should be doing. Right. So, do you
Mhm.
have clarity on what's enough? What's enough attention? What's enough deliverability?
Yeah. I mean, for as far as what needs to be done, it is pretty clear. And like I said, it's not so much about even it's the things I don't know. It's what I guess what gets me more anxious.
Yeah.
It's the things of that, did I was there a bill that was missed? Was there, this was something just it's the unknown, I think, is a bigger
Mhm.
issue. I know that the stuff that I'm doing is good, but what if there was something that I missed that wasn't aware of? That is a problem.
Yeah. There's a concept in coaching called worry ahead of time. And what that is where we like get anxiety or stress or worry about stuff that hasn't happened yet. And usually only 30% of the time that's even worth it. So, like, what if you were just to step back and your brain is like, don't forget, you should worry. There might be a bill that's missed, there might be something. But are you able to tell yourself, like, hey, it's okay, we got it. I know how to fix this if there's a problem? Like, is there room for that?
Yeah, and it's usually the way I do approach it is, well, it's the well usually the way I will usually approach it is one of two ways. Is I know I'll have a meeting at 6 o'clock as an example, and I'll say that either I'll just keep myself busy until 6 o'clock, and then that way when the time hits, I'm like, okay, I gotta just jump into the meeting, and I don't have time to think about the anxiety of getting into it. The challenge there is, and I feel like I'm coming in a bit unprepared.
Mm,
And then the other solution would be is more what you say, is to um, basically take some time beforehand to to think through it, and to just say, okay, let's just make sure that I have all these boxes checked, and if all the boxes are checked, that's at least good enough for me to go and present to them. And if something comes up, I know that I can look back at all these cases where I problems have come up and it's been a non-issue,
and you've handled it.
and
Yeah.
I've handled it, and I don't need to worry about it.
Yeah.
Um, and that's yeah, that's what has worked so far. Um, but it just, yeah, it still comes out that it's just still has that anxiety that
Have you done like
still there.
thought downloads around this?
I don't know
Are
what
you
that is.
familiar with thought downloads? Okay. So let's say, when's your next call, for example?
Tuesday morning.
Tuesday morning. Okay. So you're thinking about your call Tuesday morning and you sit down with a notebook or a voice note app or whatever works for you. And you're putting down all your thoughts about that call. What would those kind of thoughts be?
I don't know.
That's challenging. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So, for those of us with ADHD, sometimes we can feel like our thoughts are just happening to us. It's
Hmm.
just like it's immediate. And then our thoughts create our feelings, which make us take or not take certain actions, which get us the results that we get. Right. And you're very good in the feeling area, it sounds like, where like you're able to help your child go, okay, like what big feelings are you having is kind of how I summarize like what you're
Hmm.
doing. But the thinking is what creates the feelings. Like your son had a thought about something his brother did, and that made him feel sad, for example,
Mhm.
and made him maybe cry, take the action, And with you, when I ask you to like pin down your thoughts, it's challenging. So what I would challenge you to do, like an action item to take away from this call, would be take some time, maybe set a timer. I'm always pulling in my visual timer. I love the visual timers. You can get an app on your phone that does a visual timer. As long as you're like me and you've turned off every single notification on your phone, that can be very effective. But like set a visual timer before your meeting and just take down the thoughts that you're having. And like you do with your son, get curious about those thoughts. Like, why might I be thinking that? What else could I be thinking? And a good tool that I've offered in previous calls is, or I could be thinking. So, an example that you gave is, I may have missed something. I may have missed something, and this person might be upset with me. Or I
Mhm.
could be thinking, I've got this. I've handled it before. Or I could be thinking, I've taken care of everything I'm aware of. Or I could be thinking, they might be completely happy with the situation. And I've seen that in the past where that's been true. The or I could be thinking only works if it's true. If it's just positive thinking, that's like
Mhm.
the saying is lipstick on a pig, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Your brain is just like it just shuffles it right out. It's like, no, that's not true. Forget that. Is that something that you might find effective?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'll give that a try.
Yeah. And I think really getting aware of those thoughts that you're having about the call, because I think right now they're just happening so fast and it's creating anxiety. And sometimes that's people pleasing. Is that anything in your world?
Um, that's a good question. So I used to think not, but there's probably an aspect of it that, so like one of the things I used to think was that I was, I used to think I was a very cold person, that I didn't really care about people that much.
Hmm.
And then I
I used to
started
feel
under,
that way too. That's very interesting.
and then I started realizing that I'm actually a very empathetic person,
Yeah.
and that I'm able to, and it's like I'm still, I don't explain this. Like I'm able to keep my perspective on things. So like I can look at someone and say I can understand how they feel and the challenges and the struggles they're going with, and I feel bad for them. But at the same time, I understand that this is kind of life, and I need to. So like my sister-in-law's going for some challenges right now, and I I can look at this and say like I feel bad for her. I feel bad for the challenges she's going through, but I have no impact on that. And so I compartmentalize it. That's probably the best word I could use, is
Hmm.
I'm able to compartmentalize it better. But as far as going with people pleasing, is that um, it's there's probably more there probably is an aspect of it that comes from this more empathetic side of me, that you know feels bad for people and want to try and make people happy. I just it's never something that I really kind of identified with myself,
Yeah.
if that makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah. And so she said challenge one was these phone calls. And I have another client that is a loan officer and has a very big challenge with making the phone calls that need to be made. This anxiety
Mhm.
around the phone calls happens a lot. But really, I think the biggest tool would be, and if we had more sessions, it would be fantastic. But what I want you to go away with today is write down those thoughts, question those thoughts, get curious about those thoughts as if those thoughts were your own child. Like those thoughts are just things that your brain is offering you. They are not you. They they are separate from you. Our thoughts don't like I think sometimes people think like, oh, if I think this certain thought, I'm like an axe murderer or something like that. And that's not the case. Like our brain just
Mhm.
offers us all kinds of crazy thoughts to protect us or to keep everything the same. You mentioned the task initiation issue. I'm equating it to an executive function skill because that's what ADHD is, right? It's a a loss of executive function in certain areas. But if we were to equate it to that, like the getting started part, like
Mhm.
that's also an anxiety and there's thoughts around that. Like what kind of things going into that? What kind of things do you have trouble getting started with? You mentioned the emails, letters. Are there other
Yeah.
things or is that mainly it?
Well, I can give a so I ran into a problem earlier this year where I had to. I don't. Okay, I'll try and keep this. If I'm going too much in the weeds on this, just let me know. I try, but there's some bit of context to it.
Yeah.
So, like I mentioned before, I live in Europe, and the way cars get registered is just different than what happens in the United States. And
Okay.
it's something that was a big learning curve for me when I first came here, just understanding this. And I had to go through, like, I knew that my car registration was ending, and I knew that there was a series of steps that we're doing that needed to go through to get this done. And I knew that this was going on for months. And the and just even I need to what I needed to do was I needed to send a um basically just to make sense. The way it works is like you haven't when you buy a car, you don't take ownership of the car. You get a power of attorney saying that you can drive and use and have all rights of the car as if you were the
Interesting.
owner. It's kind of weird. So I needed to send a text message to the owner of the car, even though it's my car. um, but I needed to send a single text message to the owner. That's all I needed to do was send this message. And I neglected it. I didn't do it for months. I have no good reason not to doing it for months, but just the amount of effort it took me to actually do it, and I basically waited until like the last minute possible to get it done. And
Mhm.
I was like I was carrying even with this, I was carrying all this stress and this anxiety about this that like, hey, I haven't gotten this done yet. And so again, it's something where I could look at this rationally and say, I know it needs to be done. I know it's not a problem to get it done, but I think it came down to this just be again because it's a new process. It's something that I wasn't really familiar with, and so the unknown of what could happen on the other side of it
Yeah.
was just overwhelming to me, and that I just didn't take action much earlier. And if I did, all the stress would have gone away, all the problems would have gone away, and all the challenges that resulted actually from my failure to take action sooner wouldn't have happened. Um, but yeah, that's probably a really good example of just failure to take action on a really simple task.
So usually the reason we don't take action as people with ADHD is it's either boring, it's too big, or we don't know how. And we don't know how could be we don't have the skills, we don't know the next steps like you're describing with this. So what stopped you from just, I mean, it's a text. What stopped you from setting a timer for 5 minutes and sending the text?
It's because I I didn't know what the outcome of the text would be. I didn't know where I needed to get a document from the owner. Um, and there's nothing like I don't know, he could have come back and said just well, you could have just ignored it and would have been stuck. He could have just said, oh, I'll do it if you go and pay me another €100 or something like he could, or like he did. He said, yeah, no problem, get over to you, which is ultimately what happened. Um, but just not knowing how, I guess I would put it this way is I am very good at identifying all the possible ways things can turn out badly. And
Mm,
so I'm aware about how all these problems can happen.
yeah.
And so I end up focusing more on all the problems instead of the fact that things will most likely I can even look at like I give you so many examples of where things just turned out the right way
Yeah.
when they shouldn't have, and I could accept this. Like, I understand, but I'm so good at identifying all the ways things are just gonna you know end up turning badly for me.
And our brains are wired that way to like find the negative and to, like I said before, be protective. And then you get the problematic issue of being smart. So I'm sorry. The smarter you are, the more you're able to identify everything that's going to
Yes,
go wrong. But like,
yes.
what if you just started practicing thinking that it's all going to work out?
And that is something I like literally within the past like month, probably even past couple of weeks, I've really tried
Really?
doing that. And yeah, so I recently took a trip to El Salvador,
Mhm.
and the entire time during the trip, again, for a lot of the same reasons, like I when I do travel, I do get some anxiety about like all the things that can go badly, and I just push my way through, and just say I just need I break down my whole trip just in small steps. Like, okay, right now I just need where I'm at the gate, and if I'm at the gate, everything else is fine.
Good
Great, I'm on
job.
the
Yeah.
plane. Great, don't need to worry about stuff, and that's how I get through that. And um, with this recent trip I took, there was I kept telling myself, okay, all the things like things are going to work out, things are going to be fine. And if you don't mind, I'm going to share a really interesting anecdote because this really
Please.
emphasizes how things do turn out well.
Yeah.
Um, but a good example of this is when I was actually coming back, I you know people drive kind of crazy in El Salvador. I mean, it just is what it is, and I'm not used to kind of that kind of self driving. And I was like, I needed to get to the airport. Airport's an hour away from the main city, and so I was like, I really don't want to be driving at night. So my flight was at 11 o'clock at night, but I was like, I'm just going to get at the airport at 6 o'clock, so that way I'm there right at sundown, and I don't know about driving at night when everyone's kind of being a bit more crazy. And so I arrive at the airport, try checking in, can't check in because I'm there 11 hours early. Of
Mm.
course, I can't check in. Not a big deal. I'm just going to go hang out at one of the restaurants nearby and wait for wait a couple hours. Well, while I'm waiting at the restaurant, um, I end up getting a series of emails, and ultimately, at 7:30, I see an email that says that they're boarding my flight, which doesn't make sense because my flight's at 11 o'clock, not at 7:30. Turns out they canceled the 11 o'clock flight, poked me on the 8 o'clock flight, and never notified me. And so I ended up running to the gate, and ultimately I was boarding the plane at what was it 7:53, and we were taxiing at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
And so the reality is that like this worked out when it shouldn't have. I mean, you shouldn't arrive at it for an international flight until 3 hours beforehand. But if I did that, I would arrive right when the actual flight I was booked on now was leaving, and so things just worked out. And
Yeah.
I got and I did get stuck in El Salvador, um, and that was a massive relief. And
Yeah.
so I can look at this has been something I've actually really held on to and said, okay, look, I'm just gonna accept things are gonna work out in ways. And even more recently, this another situation of a car where I you know there was a hot day and I was like, I'm just gonna leave my windows rolled down a bit. Well, turned out that the battery in my car died, and the battery's actually underneath the passenger side door. And so, in order for me to actually get the jumper cables into the battery, I had to go through the little crack of the window that I left open. Completely
Yeah.
coincidental,
Yeah.
but it just worked out. And so that is something I've really been trying to not just believe, but really pay attention to. These like, wow, this is crazy how this just happened to work out in a perfect way.
Yeah.
And
One of my favorite
um,
thoughts around that is like it's always working out. And I actually share that with my husband. And it's funny, like when we get like a parking spot or, get into a restaurant that we shouldn't be able to get into or something like that. I'm like, it's always working out. And
yep,
even just to say that, like it just relaxes my shoulders. Like it's always working out. So like, what if we took that into your phone calls as well? Like it's always working out. Like if you had missed that flight, you still would have gotten home.
yeah,
You would have figured it out. Another thought that I would offer you is like, I'm resourceful. You're smart. You don't like to brag about it, but you are as most ADHD people are, right? So we know how to make things work. Our brain just wants to offer this anxiety. How can you calm your brain around these calls that you need to make? I'm kind of flip-flopping between your two problems here, but like how can you calm your brain around these calls? What could you be telling yourself?
I oh, I think like you mentioned, just trying to take the same idea of like the things that are outside of work, where yeah, I keep pointing out how hey, these things are working out,
Mhm.
and take that same mentality and just be saying that things are going to be working out with the calls too, and I just need to, and that if they, and again, if they don't, like has happened,
Yeah.
that I still have these skills to get to work around that and to solve those problems as they come up.
Yeah. What
And
comes to
that's
my mind is
again,
I know how to fix it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and again, that's part of why people hire me. So
Yeah. So it's always working out. I had a thought as and maybe I wrote it down. No, it's always working out. But yeah, just taking that into your calls and just recognizing like, oh, okay, I'm feeling anxiety, naming your feeling like you do with your child, which is a beautiful thing. Now you get to parent yourself and name your feeling and going, okay, I'm feeling anxiety about this call. Why am I feeling anxiety about this call? What's going on? And just checking in with yourself and going, okay, I'm afraid that this might happen. Okay, what are you going to do about that? Like, or you could go to like worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, this client is completely angry with me, which is like once you start thinking about it, it's almost ridiculous, right? Like,
yeah.
that's not going to happen, but you're good at what you do and that's not going to be the case. But if you go to worst case scenario, your brain gets to go, oh, okay. So you under that's what our brains are saying. You understand this could be terrible. This could be a dumpster fire. Like,
Hmm.
thank you for understanding. I can go calm down now. That's what worst case scenario does for us. So, we have about 5 minutes left. Is there anything else that you wanted to share?
um no, I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Well, we've got some tools to work on. I'd love for you to do some thought downloads and understand like what's going on in your brain. That's going to really help you like slow things down so that your thoughts aren't happening so quickly that you're getting the feelings and you don't understand where the feelings are coming from. Those thought downloads. Now, when you do the thought downloads, you don't get to judge it. That's so I tell my clients what happens is first we have awareness and then we have judgment. And this is regarding thoughts. It's actually regarding everything. First we have awareness, then we have judgment. You're going to go, oh, it's kind of a mess in my brain. I don't love that I'm having all these negative thoughts. And then you have acceptance, where it's like, okay, I have positive thoughts and I have negative thoughts, and that's okay. And it doesn't mean anything about me. It's just how my brain works, and that's okay. But you kind of don't get to skip a step. You have the awareness, which is where the thought download is going to come in, and then the judgment. And when the judgment comes, just go, okay, Mandy said this would happen. Mandy said I would think that I'm a negative, terrible person for thinking all the things that I'm thinking, and that's okay. And then you have the acceptance. I'm a human. I'm thinking good things and I'm thinking bad things. What gets me to the goal that I want to get to? What makes me make the call? What makes me take the next step on the thing I need to do? What makes me open the letter? What makes me open the email? Like, what are those things? What thought helps me get there? And one thing that you mentioned that you're kind of already doing with, you mentioned it with the flight, is like just the next step. Just all I have to worry about is the next step. And that's
Hmm.
it. And after that, everything is going to work out. And because it's always working out for you, right?
Yeah,
I love how that goes full
eventually.
circle.
Eventually.
Eventually, yes.
Yeah, there's
Um,
some bumps in the road, but it gets there.
and that's okay. It's just all part of the experience, right?
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. All right, RJ, is there any way, and you don't have to, but is there any way you would like people to reach out to you?
Yeah, I mean, if there's anybody that is interested in having getting some exceptional property management consultation or needs some assistance with managing their bookkeeping, specifically using the Appfolio software, that's the only one I specialize in. So if you use someone else, can't really help you too much. Then yeah, reach out to me. You can send an email to me at rjisaac.com.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for being here today and sharing and being so vulnerable. I'm sure it's going to help people go, yeah, me too.
I'm glad I can help.
All right. Thanks, RJ.